Hey YouTube, it's Eric. This video is gonna be pretty quick. If you're not aware of it, I'm just gonna be covering in this video that Henry Kissinger was always a Jesuit puppet. You know, where he came up under John J. McCloy. There's a lot of information on the relationship of Kissinger and John J. McCloy in Kai Bird's book, The Chairman, which is a biographical of John J. McCloy, which I have a physical copy of it. It's a good book, but interestingly, like John J. McCloy was quoted by the New York Times saying, "I have a very Catholic attitude on things." And McCloy was instrumental in Operation Paperclip. He was behind the jailing of the Japanese in the internment camps in the United States. So Kissinger came up uh, completely in the Jesuit aristocracy. No one rises to a position of prominence if you're not controlled by the Vatican at this point in American history. But if you're not aware, Kissinger was actually a professor at Georgetown University, and Kissinger was he's been a lifetime member of the Center of Strategic Studies at Georgetown. I'll show you the Wikipedia page of it, and I'll show you some photos. The CSIS is the abbreviation, the Center of International Studies at Georgetown. It's one of the most prominent military think tanks in the world. It might even be number one, like in terms of like the establishment sources prop it up as the best think tank, and it's at Georgetown. But I'm gonna show you. Kissinger was a professor at Jesuit Georgetown, and Kissinger, like famously, he's a war criminal. Like just one instance of his war crimes is how he propped up the fascist Augusto Pinochet regime in Chile. Augusto Pinochet, coincidentally, was a Knight of Malta, and I linked an article in the Nation. The Nation magazine did it, and it shows Kissinger's relationship with Pinochet. But here's the Washington Post covered. This was in 1977. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger has accepted a one-year appointment as a professor in Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service, the school that was founded by the Jesuit priest Edmund Walsh, who was a mentor to Joseph Stalin. You see here, reliable sources said this yesterday. Kissinger will be a full-time faculty member at Jesuit Georgetown, according to the sources, and he will teach courses in quote international diplomacy. The appointment is expected to be announced sometime next week. You see, in Kissinger, rejected an offer from Columbia University to come to Georgetown. And you see here, Kissinger was also involved in the Inquisition in Vietnam. Operation Phoenix was literally like an Inquisition terror program that even had the Roman Reef on the Phoenix seal. Ngo Diem, the puppet who was placed in Vietnam, was a full-on Catholic who tried to govern South Vietnam on papal encyclicals, like Wild Bill Donovan, even the Knight of Saint Sylvester, Knight of Malta, the fascist, while he was the American ambassador in Thailand. Wild Bill Donovan would fly to Saigon to meet with Ngo Diem privately, and Donovan was propping up Diem as like the savior of Vietnam. There's photo Cardinal Spellman was propping up the war in Vietnam with Kissinger. So you see, Kissinger is just like he's just like a mid-level, you know, bureaucrat. He doesn't really have any power. You see, he's submitting to the Jesuit aristocracy, which is the real power. Okay. So this one here, one source says that Kissinger, who was still living in Washington, was persuaded to take the Georgetown post because he would not have to commute. Um, you see, Kissinger currently has a position at as I mentioned, Georgetown Center for Strategic and International Studies, and lectures there from time to time in the Foreign Service School. You see, his salary for the 6 months job, which began in March, is about 15,000. This is in 1977 dollars. It is not known what Kissinger will be paid for his full-time assignment that begins in the fall. I'm sure Kissinger was getting money laundered through the Georgetown Riggs Bank, and that's actually something that Augusto Pinochet was nailed for. I'll show you that here. But this is the article in the Nation. This is just at the end of this. This is when Kissinger went to meet the Knight of Malta dictator Pinochet. This is quoting from the Nation. At the end of his meeting with Pinochet, Kissinger concludes with an Orwellian compliment, giving the general, that being Knight of Malta Pinochet, credit for advancing the cause of human rights. Really? So torturing people, throwing them into concentration camps, like mass firing squads, and like Orwellian 1984 like Ministry of Truth measures are advancing human rights in Kissinger's Jesuitical mind. This is quoting from Kissinger. I want to see our relations and friendship improve. That's what Kissinger's saying about the Knight of Malta dictator Pinochet. Kissinger says in a passage not found in the memoir. Quote, we want to help, not undermine you. You did a great service to the West in overthrowing Allende. Otherwise, Chile would have followed Cuba. there would have been no human rights. End quote. Kissinger was all in like the bottom, so you can see like a little blob of text. But it was E. Howard Hunt's, and I have a video on my channel. E. Howard Hunt, the former CIA officer that was involved in the coup to take out Arbenz in 1954. E. Howard Hunt said that the Jesuits are the world's greatest intelligence service. But E. Howard Hunt, in his memoir, says when he was a CIA agent in Cuba, he was working with this Jesuit trained official in Castro's government. So it was the Jesuits controlled both sides of it, and it coincidentally this is the Riggs Bank that was at Georgetown University. The Riggs National Bank was a bank that was actually stationed at Georgetown. You see, it was known as the Bank of the Presidents. U.S. President John Tyler, who was buddies with Jesuits Charles Constantine Pies and Father James A. Ryder, S.J., was banking there. Even the Ulysses S. Grant, who accepted or became a member of the Jesuit Philademic Society after the Jesuits murdered Abraham Lincoln, banked there. Even Lincoln banked there. It was a powerful bank. Dwight Eisenhower banked at Riggs. Richard Nixon, Bohemian Club member, got an honorary degree from Fordham, who had a Jesuit priest, John McLaughlin, write his speeches, and had a Roman Catholic priest, um, Father Cronin, as his anti-communist advisor. See, just huge names here. The racist John C. Calhoun was held accounts there. Daniel Webster wrote the Webster Dictionary. Even like the Jesuit stooge Jefferson Davis, who Abraham Lincoln said was like a stooge of the Jesuits, and who was bailed out for war crimes and stirring up the Civil War by his Roman Catholic lawyer. Jefferson Davis banked at Riggs. But you see, here's the former Riggs Bank. It was in Washington D.C., like on the campus of Georgetown. You see here, Augusto Pinochet, the scandal of Pinochet ended up forcing the bank to close. You see here, Augusto Pinochet, former dictator of Chile, was widely accused of corruption, illegal arms sales, and torture. And just you see here, he laundered millions through the rigs. You can read on the screen, but you can read. There's a good Washington Post article that was done exposing how he was laundering money. See, the bank ended up pleading guilty and paid $16 million in fines for helping laundering Pinochet. I think that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. Um, and the bank eventually, the Georgetown Riggs Bank was closed and was absorbed by PNC Financial. There's even like a good article on spirituallysmart.com on the on Riggs Bank. Type in spiritually smart Riggs Bank. And this article, this Leo O'Donovan, I link this in the description. For some reason, I can't pull it up the full article right now. Washington Post might have made you pay for this specific article, but there's a Jesuit priest who was actually the former president of Georgetown, where Henry Kissinger was a faculty member, who was a board of directors at Riggs National Bank, Leo Don S.J., while Augusto Pinochet was laundering money in the Riggs Bank. So you had a Jesuit priest on the board of the bank while the Knight of Malta dictator um, was laundering money into the bank. And that Kissinger was very close with Pinochet, and he was a professor at Georgetown. Just proof that he was a puppet of the Jesuits. Like he still is, like his whole career. And like here's a clip. I linked this in the description. This was at the 2016 Al Smith dinner, where Donald Trump said we need to be on guard for anti-Catholic bias. This is Alfred Smith IV. Listen to what he says. He calls Henry Kissinger a Catholic, because like a lot of disinformation agents use Henry Kissinger as like a boogeyman because he came up Jewish, but they don't tell you these facts that he was teaching at a Jesuit school. And look what Alfred Smith IV said here. Listen. Oh, do you hear that? I'm gonna play that one more time. Catholics like Henry Kissinger, Howard Rubinstein. Jews. You see, like Henry Kissinger was a puppet, and he was working for guys like Alexander Haig and Vernon Walters. Like these were the real powers, like, at this time. Alexander Haig, Secretary of State, Knight of Malta, Jesuit trained at Georgetown. Alexander Haig had a Jesuit priest who's still alive as his brother, Francis Haig. Okay, there's Frank Haig right there, the brother of the Secretary of State Alexander Haig. There's Frank Haig right there. And just another, like, these are the guys that like Vernon Walters. These were like the real power players that Henry Kissinger was just like a pawn of. Like he was working underneath them. Vernon Walters was a United States Army official and diplomat. He was deputy director of Central Intelligence. He was United States ambassador to the United Nations from '85 to '89, and he was the ambassador to the Federal Republic of Germany afterwards. Like, there's lots of actually good information on the Covert Action Bulletin on Vernon Walters' fascist activities. And you see, he went to Georgetown. He also went to the Jesuit Stonyhurst College as well, and he's a member of the Center of the CSIS at Georgetown. Um, he was writing speeches for Richard Nixon. He's been at Vernon Walters was in like 6 different presidential administrations. And here's the organization that Truman or Kissinger speaks at here. Where was it? You type in, oh, I must have deleted it. You type in CSIS at Georgetown. Here it is here, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Yeah, you see it's a think tank in the United States. It was founded as the Center for Strategic and International Studies of Georgetown University in 1962. You see the center conducts policy studies and strategic analysis of political, economic, and security issues throughout the world, with specific focus on issues concerning international relations. And note, guys, this think tank was created in the thick of the Cold War in 1962. It kind of reminds me how, like, in the Korean War, the Jesuit Soigang University, which is like ruling the country of South Korea to this day, is go to the alumni list. There's been South Korean presidents who have been Jesuit trained. The Soigang University was built in 1960 during like the thick of the Korean War. You see, the center at Georgetown conducts policy studies and strategic analysis of political, economic, and security issues, specifying on international relations, trade, technology, finance, energy, and geostrategy. This is just like concepts like a Bilderberg think tank. The Bilderberg think tank was founded by a Jesuit, Joseph Rettinger at SJ. You see, and like former Secretary of Defense Chuck Jesuit trained Chuck Hagel speaks there. Okay, they have discussions there hosted by Bob Schiffer on CBS News. It's very prominent, and you can see like the board of trustees. Just look at like Zabrany Brzezinski, Jesuit trained at Loyola High School, who had his daughter Mika Brzezinski, Jesuit trained, currently uh, pundit on MSNBC as the first reporter to report on 9/11. See, the president of Armitage International, Richard Armitage, spoke there. You see, Henry Kissinger was a counselor, and Henry Kissinger is a counselor and a trustee at the Center for Strategic International Studies at Georgetown. You see, these are just prominent names. Like this is essentially like the deep state, if you will. Look at all these business CEOs who speak at the Jesuit think tank at Georgetown. Look at this. And just remind, and I'll show you just this was a Mark. I thought this was very significant. Just this Mark Weinberger, no doubt, speaks at the CSIS. I'm just going to show you his biography. This Jesuit trained Mark Weinberger, this Jesuit trained CEO of Ernst and Young, like speaks with the Russian Prime Minister annually. You see here, Mark plays an active role in the World Economic Forum, serving as a member of the International Business Council and a global agenda steward for economic process. He chairs the Russia Foreign Investment Advisory Council with Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev. Dmitry Medvedev was like a KGB stooge who has like long ties back to Putin. But you see here, like a Jesuit-trained American businessman chairs the Russia Foreign Investment Advisory Council with the Prime Minister of Russia. Okay, more proof that Russia is controlled by the Jesuits. Okay, but just I wanted to bring out this video that Kissinger taught at Georgetown. He's a member of the Georgetown Center of Strategic International Services think tank. It's a very prominent, powerful think tank, and a lot of disinformation agents and shills will point to Kissinger as like the big boogeyman in the United States, and they'll say that Kissinger is controlling everything. Interestingly, the Jesuit-trained former director of NASA, Sean O'Keefe, who is also the chairman of Airbus Group, he's currently a professor at secular Syracuse University and a former chancellor of secular LSU. He Jesuit-trained Sean O'Keefe is a distinguished senior advisor at CSIS. Tons of interesting connections like that. Michael Leiden. Michael Leiden was he was this guy is still alive. He was putting out a ton of disinformation during the whole Bulgarian connection during 1983 when the Jesuit mass media uh, used Muhammad Aga as like a Manchurian style candidate to boost their increased security apparatus spending. And interesting, Michael Leiden like was very connected to the Jesuit trained Knight of Malta Al Haig, which I showed you earlier in the video. And Michael Leiden was just propping up like the whole Bulgarian connection story that Claire Sterling was propping out. Claire Sterling was a disinformation propagandist who was living in Rome. There's some good information. Yeah, you see about the Bulgarian connection. There's a lot interesting connection on Michael Leiden in Covert Action Information Bulletin, but he was a part of this think tank. This is probably one of the biggest, most prominent think tanks in the United States. Center for Strategic and International Studies. It's at Georgetown. And here are some photos of it. I'm sure John McCain spoke there before he died recently. Like tons of prominent people do, like tons. You see, I know Obama probably spoke there. Actually, I saw a photo of Trump and Trudeau were at. Looking here. Pretty sure there's a picture of Trump and Trudeau at Georgetown. Oh, my caps are on. I had it up on my camera or my laptop. I think there was I know Donald Trump has spoken at the CSIS. You can see the photo of it. Here's Attorney General Jeff Sessions speaking at the Georgetown Law Center. But yeah, that's Jeff Sessions right there. Yeah, I just want to show you that Henry Kissinger was a puppet his entire career, and he propped up. You can actually there's a photo I wanted to. Here's Henry Kissinger with Mao Zedong, who is like I know that there's a statue of Matteo Ricci, the prominent Jesuit, I think near Shanghai, which is very telling. But China is like the Jesuits' communist utopia. This might be Kissinger here with Pinochet. Yeah, there he is. There's Kissinger with Pinochet right here. Pinochet on the left, the Knight of Malta. Kissinger on the right. Kissinger. There. This was in 1976, a year before Kissinger became professor at Jesuit Georgetown. And while the Knight of Malta dictator Pinochet was laundering millions of dollars through the Georgetown Bank, Riggs National Bank, a Jesuit priest was on the board of directors. Okay, let me just see if anyone's in the chat here. Actually, I'll play this clip of Alfred Smith IV saying Henry Kissinger was a Catholic one more time at the Al Smith dinner.
I got the amazing support of the many devoted Catholics on stage. You know, Catholics like Henry Kissinger.
Right there, and they're all laughing, putting the truth in the form of a joke. Hey, thanks, Mr. Fox. Appreciate it. Yeah, actually, I know you said you got a physical copy of this book, but I've been going through more of Lord Robert Montagu's book here, Recent Events, and a clue to their solution. He's going through how during Gladstone's government he nominated um, Lord Arrington as a diplomatic ambassador to the Pope, and it's just some really good information. I appreciate you tuning in. And yeah, if you weren't aware of that info with Kissinger, I think it's very revealing that he was a professor at Georgetown. And I recommend looking in more to the Center of the CSIS organization at Georgetown. Very, very prominent. It's very, very prominent. Actually, see, I think this was the photo here. Yeah, so this is a Trudeau, um, president of Mexico. I forget the guy's current name. Trump here, but this was at Georgetown University. There's Jesuit trained. Looks like Robert Lighthizer. This is at the NAFTA negotiations. This is Robert Lighthizer, the United States Secretary of Trade, is a Jesuit trained at Georgetown. He was a prominent lawyer at the Skadden law firm, and was Ronald Reagan's deputy trade representative. Ronald Reagan was made a Knight of Malta in 1989. But yeah, that's all for this one, YouTube. Peace and love, and Namnas.